meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill, and I believe it was Mel Brooks who, in the movie History of the World, said, "It's good to be the king." And Alfonso XIII of Spain was in that position. He was a gearhead at heart and wanted his country to make great cars that he could be proud of. And being king, he of course got what he wanted. And the man who made his wish come true was a poor Swiss orphan that just needed an opportunity to make both the king's and his own dreams come true. This brilliant man, both engineer and artist, was of course Marc Birkigt. Marc was born in Geneva, Switzerland in 1878. His father was a tailor, his mother a housewife, though she passed away when he was 2 years old. His father died when young Marc was barely 12, and he was sent to the home of his grandmother to raise him. She noticed that he had two considerable talents. He was a gifted artist and had quite the knack for tinkering. Grandma was not a wealthy woman, but she did manage to get him enrolled in Geneva's schools of arts and trades, which he graduated from in 1896 with an engineering degree. Marc did want to continue his studies, but unfortunately his grandmother passed away shortly after his graduation, and he had no choice but to find work or starve. He briefly found work in Geneva at a company that made watchmakers' tools. However, after a few months, he enlisted in the Swiss Army. The Army furthered his training, adding gunsmithing to his list of skills. And after serving for a couple of years in the mountain artillery, he was discharged and once again needed to find work. Now, Marc was quite fascinated with the new automotive technology that was rapidly developing in Europe, but Switzerland of the time was very anti-car. Indeed, the tourism board recommended that people visiting the country not take a car with them, as the locals are likely to vandalize it. But a friend of his from his school days, a Mr. Carlos Vallino, told him that in Spain there was a crazy king that loved cars, and anyone that had any engineering talent would be welcomed with open arms. And so, in 1899, Marc Birkigt left Geneva to seek his fortune in Barcelona. His friend Carlos introduced him to a Mr. Emilio de la Cuandra, himself a former artillery officer who owned a small company that was building electric cars. Emilio hired Marc as an engineer. Marc was not impressed with the cars La Guardia was building, especially the very primitive battery technology, so he set to design a new model, a hybrid. In this car, a small single-cylinder engine powered a generator that would keep the batteries charged. Unfortunately, the car was not a success, and though he did design and build a city bus using this hybrid method that was successful, the company went bankrupt in 1901. Marc returned to Geneva, got married, and started to settle down when one of the men who funded the La Cuandra company, Jose Castro, asked him to come back to Barcelona and be the chief engineer of a new and reorganized La Cuandra company. He accepted and returned to Spain in 1902. Marc abandoned the whole electric hybrid thing and designed more conventional gas-engined cars, and his designs were outstanding. His new cars had either 2 or 4-cylinder engines of 10 and horsepower respectively. He designed a 4-speed sliding pinion gearbox to go with his engine and invented a new type of drive chain, the double Cardan drive shaft. This drive shaft was double jointed at one end, which allowed a greater range of angular movement of the shaft when operating. Thus, the cars were more able to handle rough terrain, where the car would be bouncing quite a bit. The shaft wouldn't bind up due to the transverse movement and basically made drive chains obsolete. Unfortunately, this company also failed. Though his car designs were absolutely spectacular, the administration of the company wasn't on the same par as Marc's engineering skills. They ran out of money, and the La Cuandra reboot was defunct by 1903. However, Marc had gotten a lot of notice while in Barcelona, and many people were afraid that he'd go back to Geneva and from there get recruited into some other car maker. This would not do, so a new group of investors bought the remains of Lecoindre and begged Marc to remain. The offer they gave him was a good one. Reorganize the company with Marc as the chief designer and engineer. Marc could build whatever cars he wanted, and he wanted to make cars that were stylish, fast, and powerful, just like King Alfonso wanted. The new company was named Hispano-Suiza in honor of Marc's heritage as a man from Switzerland. From 1904 to 1938, this company would be responsible for designing and building the greatest cars ever to be produced in Spain. The king got his cars, and Marc Birkigt became the most celebrated car designer in the country. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.